Welcome to the Sharp Way Show. Yes, a little bit past 7 p.m. on the East Coast, so it's time for the Sharp Way Show. Friday evening, thank you for giving me a small chunk of your evening. So amazing. Happy to have you here. I am very lucky this evening, and guess what? So are you. We have a wonderful guest, someone who has insight, someone who is trying something very new and exciting. You might think she's crazy. I think she's amazing, but I mean, maybe she's both. She could be both of those things. You never know. She is a former producer for Timcast and the current host of, hope I get it right, the Trad Wife Story Hour on right now. The one, the only, AKA Sour Patch Lids, Lydia Leitermann. How are you?
I'm great. Thanks so much for having me, Larry. I'm stoked to be here with you.
I am happy to have you also. And for those of you who want to follow her, you can. Please do so on Twitter at Sour Patch Lids. If you are listening, that's Sour Patch, and Lids is Lyds. Don't mess it up with an I. It's Lyds, and the same on YouTube.
Correct.
Well, there's two things I want to bring up, and they're right back to back. First, you, then something popular. You packed up and left something that was very popular, right? Very popular. People knew, very popular, to go and kind of reboot in a way, right? To kind of, I guess, take your life back maybe, or change your lifestyle or something. That had to be tough. Why would you make that step? And let me go one step further. Move cities too, like not just change your job, but move cities.
That's right. So our main goal was to further our community. We were trying to build our own family. That's one thing we've been trying to do. We're trying to create our own family. We're trying to have kids. But we also wanted to be close to Andy's family, my husband's family. And he has family up in the blue state of Massachusetts, which is where we are now. And it's been really interesting. People here are really nice. I lost my wallet. Really interesting story. I ended up losing my wallet at a park, and a lady found it. She got in touch with me by email, and I said, how did you know who I was? And she said, I looked you up on social media. And I was like, oh boy, she knows everything I think now. And she still decided to return.
She still gave you.
Yeah.
Wow.
I was
and
really
she didn't
touched.
call the police on you. Oh my
exactly.
God.
She told me that I was some kind of extremist. She's like, I don't want to meet this lady. I'm going to put it on my front porch and come get it. But she did. She gave it back to me. We went over to her. She told me where she lived, which was also super awesome. And we just went and picked it up. I was just touched. And I was like, that is a really nice thing to happen to me. In my experience in this town, everyone's been super nice. And people tell me, well, they wouldn't think the same of you if they knew what you thought. And I'm like, well, I know at least one lady who
does.
I thought. Yeah, yes. And she still managed to be kind. So this really goes to my whole thesis. As we were making this move, I was like, you know what? I think that most normal people don't want to be red and blue. They want to just be people. They would like to be friends with the people who live around them. They want to get along with their neighbors, and they want to maybe argue about things they don't agree with and then return to being friends. And that has so far proven to be exactly the case. So
I would bet where you are talking about the Patriots.
Yep, exactly.
Yes, where I am, we talk about the Giants and the Jets. So where you are,
right.
what Patriots? Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. No, I live in the deep blue city of New York. I mean, I get it completely, right? I live. You know my political leanings, and you know they're not mainstream New York City political leanings at all. Right. But yes, somehow I still manage to have friends here. So I do think you're correct, and I'm glad to see that's what was important to you. So let's now shift that, if we could, to someone else trying something new, but someone much more popular than you or I, the man himself, Steven Crowder.
Yeah.
With him, I guess, I mean, I know that before you left, him offered you $50 million. You then told him no. I know that's exactly what happened.
Yeah.
That's what happened. Exactly. Yes. Well, then he offered me $50 million and I told him no. So that's what happened. That's the real, okay. Clearly guys were making jokes. That's not what happened. But yes.
Yeah, no, that didn't happen.
But do you have a view? I mean, this is your world too, right? Yeah. I mean, this is your world too. And I'm sure when in your last position, you've probably had conversation with people from that world, right? Been privy to conversations, if not having them yourself, I'm sure. So what's your 2 cents on this?
Okay, so first of all, I have been around people who have recorded people without their knowledge. And in my mind, this is one of the slimiest things you can do because
Ooh,
when you're speaking to
okay.
someone, like on the phone or whatever, maybe in person, the understanding is that you are speaking in confidence. And I have people say to me, they're like, well, this is in confidence. And I say, everything you say to me is in confidence unless you tell me you want it
Got
to be
it.
public. And that's how I kind of assumed that everyone operated, but apparently that's not the case.
That's not the case.
Right, exactly. I was a little disturbed by Steven Crowder recording somebody who thought he was his friend. I was like, that's not on. I don't like that. I feel like Crowder had some valid points. I thought the Daily Wire had valid points, but it really speaks to a deeper issue that I see here that ties into my own thesis.
Oh, hold on
I
1 second.
Mhm.
If someone is listening, keep your thesis in your head for 1 second. If someone's listening, this may be some inside baseball. For
Yeah.
those who don't know, Steven Crowder is still to this day and has been a very popular conservative content creator,
Yeah.
mostly on YouTube, but also on other platforms to include his own. Very popular. Millions of people watch him, millions of views, very popular. He has worked at, I believe he's worked at The Blaze in the past, he's worked at other places in the past, and now he's on his own. And the Daily Wire gave him an offer, not an offer, but gave him an initial idea on how to work together. And Crowder was not happy with it, publicly said it was a bad idea, linked it towards things like slavery and ownership and stuff like that. The Daily Wire came out and said, hey, it's $50 million. So can you not do the slavery thing?
Yeah.
I'm kind of putting together an hour long, but it basically was that.
Right.
And then Crowder said, no, it's slavery. And here is a recording of a call that you and I had where you used the phrase wage slave.
Yes.
So that's kind of where they are. I did that kind of succinctly. I hope that made sense.
I hope so
And
too.
so now people are saying, is Crowder wrong? Is the Daily Wire wrong for wanting to own so much of it? Is Crowder wrong for this? Blah, blah, blah. That's where the back and forth is. I'm
Right.
sorry now. Go ahead, Lydia. Do your
So
thing. I apologize.
I appreciate that. I just dive in. I kind of assume that everybody's as in the minute as I am, and most people hopefully aren't. I'm probably what they call chronically online, which is a little bit too much sometimes. But yeah, so there's a kind of a little bit of a civil war going on with two different factions of the actual conservative right wing, which is interesting to see, not something I've seen in my own time on the internet. I knew it was going to happen. I know that there are all kinds on the right, and I know that we're very individualistic. I really appreciate and respect that. I think it's great. And I like that we're having these conversations. I think it's important. People were giving me a hard time because they're saying it doesn't matter that Stephen was friends with the guys at the Daily Wire. He was right to call them out on their like cozying up to big tech or whatever it was. And I said, you know what? Conservatism and all the ideas we espouse are based on relationships. This is how we affect cultural change is not from the top down, it's from the bottom up. So this is like
Okay.
friends, families, church relationships, because you don't want an authoritarian government involved in your life pretty much at all. You want to be able to say to your kids, you know, for example, it's better to get married. It's better to not, for example, have an abortion. It's better to find one good spouse and stick with them. It's better to raise your kids. These are all things that parents and communities should be doing. I actually read a study a long time ago I need to touch back on, but it said something along the lines of if there are males in the neighborhood, like involved men around the household, even if that family is fatherless, the family's children will still be okay because they have that influence, even though they're not the dads. And I thought that was
Because they
really
have the positive male role model in their life, even though it
exactly.
isn't in that physical house.
Exactly. And I thought
Got
that
it.
was so neat, so inspiring because it was like, it really is about community and being friends with somebody, even if you go into business with them, which I know can be a little dicey. Doing business with friends is always kind of hard, but we have to have that understanding of trust that I kind of felt that Steven Crowder betrayed. I really took issue with him recording, Jeremy Boring without his knowing. I thought that was really kind of unprofessional and kind of unethical. I didn't feel like they offered him anything super insulting. And even if they had, this really isn't the kind of thing. It's not kind or professional to kind of air that dirty laundry online. So that was my conclusion. I was like, conservatives need to protect relationships pretty much above all else. But then I also realized that both parties could certainly be capitalizing on this kind of rage baiting, click farming stuff that they've got going on there. So they
let
could
me
be
let me touch that piece, right? I think there are two pieces. I agree with you completely on the relationship thing. I think friendship does matter.
Yes.
I do. I think it matters. And that may seem trite or silly, but I do think it matters because at the highest levels of business, and I have done some deals at high levels, not like billions of dollars. I've never done transactions in the billions. But I have done some in the high levels. I've been an officer in a public company twice. And at the highest level, they do business with people who they trust. Right. Skill set is not as important. And you might think, well, wait a minute, Larry, you're going to deal with, 10, 20, 30, $40 million, $100 million. Skill set's everything. It is not, because they realize that things can go wrong and often will go wrong. And there'll be misunderstandings and blah, blah, blah. And if they don't trust you, you're going to court and everybody's losing.
Right.
They don't want to go to court. Nobody wants to go to court, right? They go to court as a last resort or because they're trying to hammer you for some reason or they're mad or vindictive, but nobody wants to go to court. So most people at the highest level, they care about trust. The problem with the Crowder DW situation is if it's real, and to your second point, it may not be.
Right.
If it's real, they have broken trust, right? And so no matter what the good deal is, maybe they want to offer them $100 million or whatever is the thing, they can't do it anymore because the trust is now broken. So I think your point's right on the money when it comes to friendship. But I would go one step further. At the lowest levels, two people are starting a new business. Trust is even more important because here's the opposite side of this. People are saying it's such a big deal and blah, blah, blah. And I'm going to go, with the bigger issue, which is we shouldn't care so much. Why? These are two massively heavy hitter entities that can talk about $50 million deals and reject $50 million deals. Right. I'm not in that world. I wish I was. I wish they were offering me. I wish we were getting off $50 million, Lydia. That would be awesome. But we're not there. So in the worst case scenario, let's say Steven Crowder takes it on the chin and he gets his butt beat in this socially. So let's, for example, right now that's not the case, but let's say it's true. Maybe he'll lose 10% of his audience. Maybe. So he'll still be a multimillionaire either way. He'll be fine. Say the Daily Wire gets just slaughtered socially, right? On social, they get killed on this. Maybe they'll lose 10% of their audience. Maybe. So the next deal they make will only be a $40 million deal, not a $50 million deal. So either way, neither of them is hurt. But I think to your point, I think they both benefit.
Right. So one of the things that I learned when I first came into this world was that all publicity is good publicity. And people will tell you, oh my gosh, such bad publicity, all this stuff. They're being dragged through the mud. They're writing hit pieces on you. And I'm like, yeah, now they know my name. I don't feel bad about that. And I'm like, I see no issue with that. Call it infamy or fame, but name recognition is a powerful thing. And I saw that, the Daily Beast, I think Will Sommer writes for the Daily Beast. I think he's written the few choice pieces that Tim's had written on him. And he's really not a very truthful person. But the fact that he's talking about this really makes me maybe kind of suspect that these two guys who were very good friends, Ben Shapiro is one of Steven Crowder's first lawyers, and they've known each other for over a decade. They've really gotten along very well. And it made me wonder, was this kind of a plot to get themselves into the public eye a little bit more? I was fascinated by that idea. I'm not accusing them of anything. Good for them if this is what they had in mind. And I would like to think that they actually are still really good friends and they'll be able to do something together in the future. But I also do like that the right wing is full of independent thinking people. I don't like the idea of being a bunch of automatons like the left wing, even though that enables them to get a lot more done. I love that we're able to argue about these kinds of ideas and reach a bunch of different conclusions and kind of still come together at the end of the day. So I still see a silver lining here, and hopefully we're still able to be friends after this is all over and done with.
I don't know, to be fair. I think you're right. I don't know Steven Crowder well enough. I don't know Daily Wire people well enough at all. It's not really my world, right?
Yeah.
The libertarian world is not the conservative world. They overlap here or there, but they're
Right.
not the same world. So that's not really my world. I don't know them very well. I think I met Ben Shapiro once at an event, if I'm not
Right.
mistaken. That's about as far as I've gone. I know Glenn Beck, so it's kind of in the world, but not. He's a little bit out on his own too, a little bit, right? So
Yeah.
so he's kind of in that world, I guess. So I don't know. You're right. It could all be an amazing. Maybe they thought, how do we make another hit like that? What is a woman thing? Hey, Crowder, why don't you insult us? I mean, that
Yeah.
could have happened. I mean, who
Yeah.
knows? But my point is, you're right. This is good for both of them. People are now talking about them, thinking about them. When I ran for office, people would say, Larry, they made up these lies about you. And I'd go, great.
Right.
Oh my God, that's amazing. So they wrote about me? Yeah, awesome. And what it actually happened where they did a bunch of hit pieces for me against me. The Republican Party did in 2018, saying I was anti-cop, I was anti-gun, literally the only person who was pro-gun in the entire race. But they made up all these lies. And people were like, you got to do something. I said, no, it's great. And what ended up happening is there was no actual effect on the polling, but my social media went up.
Yep.
So it was a net gain. Right? They thought, oh, this is going to crush Larry. I'm like, no, say I'm everything.
Right,
Because what happened is people said, Larry who? And then they looked me up and went, oh, this guy isn't anti-gun at all. Oh my God. What's going on here? So yeah, I completely agree. I totally agree.
I think it's a good idea. And I like the mindset that all publicity is good publicity. Now, if they're going after your way of living, if they're going after your advertisers, that's a little bit different. But just like kind of sparring with each other in the public sphere, I think it's great. I think the public discourse is wonderful. And I like the fact that everybody's kind of engaging and really kind of getting into it and exercising their ideas with one another, not necessarily just against the enemy, which is the left. But yeah, I think it's good for us. Keeps us sharp. Iron sharpens iron.
I'm sharp every day, no matter what I do.
That's right. I know. It's in your name.
I don't have a choice. So yes. So, but you have a separate issue though right now yourself, right? I mean, you have some popularity, but I know you're trying to grow something bigger and bigger, of course, right? We all want to get bigger and get, and have more influence. Of course, we all do. Are you looking at something like that? Are you worried that now that you're not with the big boys at the moment and you're restarting, that while there's something glorious about a new start, I know I've done it too, it is something amazing and powerful and glorious. Don't you also have some fear, some worries? I mean, you seem to be so positive. I'm not trying to be a nudge. I want the audience to understand this. You're so positive, but don't you have some fear of, oh my God, did I do the right thing? Is this going to work? All these things.
Right. So this is always a concern when somebody starts a new thing. But I have to say, before we start this, the name of my show is Trad Queen Story Hour, which is a spinoff of Drag Queen Story Hour because my husband is very clever. My husband has been there for me. He's been behind the scenes tweeting out about my show. He's been hyping me up and trying to encourage me as I go into this because I'm like, it is intimidating. The world does sometimes seem very scary, but I have kind of developed this philosophy with him that if we reach even one person and kind of encourage them, our mission is accomplished. It's just that small. And because we are operating on like a person-to-person basis, I love to go through and I like to read my chats as I read the news stories every night. I start at 6 p.m. I open it up. I read something interesting and kind of offbeat. Like last night, I talked about how little kids have been getting into their parents' edibles and they look like candy. So they're eating them. And I said, hey, everybody, be super careful. If you have this kind of treat, keep it well away from your kids. It makes them really sick. Keep it away from your pets. So I just start with that kind of thing. And then we talk about basically what's breaking in the news. And everybody knows my bias. I don't really care for the Biden administration. I think it's crazy. It's like watching a movie and it is really dramatic and interesting. But I'm like, look at this. More corruption is coming out every day. But, and then I go on and I read people's comments and I know a bunch of the people in my audience and I have a lot of fun with that because it's like, I'm connecting with people I'll never meet in real life, likely, whose real names I'll never probably know. And that's okay. If my show can be a little encouraging to somebody who feels that What I was feeling on Timcast IRL was a little bit like we were too much in the it's the end of the world boat. You know what I mean? It's the
I
whole
know there's a lot of Civil War talk on that show.
no, I know there is. And I was getting to the point where
There's
it's
a
like,
lot.
well, is that how it has to go? Or can we offer some kind of alternative? And
I
then I
like
found,
that idea.
yeah. So I found research when I was first starting out that said something along the lines of 81% of people do not think it's okay or wise to judge someone based on their politics. And I said, that's it. That's what most people don't want. They don't want to be divided along party lines. It's just kind of the way it's shaking out between social media and education and all this critical race
Two-party
stuff.
system.
Exactly. Yeah, it's a problem. It really is. And that has divided us probably much more than it should have to begin with. And then with social media really amping that up
Yes.
and the pandemic worsening everything, not surprising at all. But I was very reassured to learn that people try not to judge people based on their partisan affiliation. I was like, that's very important to remember when you're going out and trying to meet people, is that people don't really want to judge you based on who you voted for. And at
Yep.
the end of the day, it's not that big a deal. You can still get along with everybody. But that was encouraging, much more so than the whole, oh my gosh, is it time for a national divorce, move out of big cities and all this stuff. I'm just like, look, there has to be a way to get along with the people who live around us. Everyone's not out to get us. It's called paranoia. We can find common ground. And it's very important that we do so because we love our country and we want to preserve something for our kids. Right. So
I like that very much.
that's
I
been my
do.
mission since we've been working on this. And it is scary, but it's worth
So
it.
I have a way of doing that. And here
Yeah.
comes my sponsor. You can head over to theadvocates.org if you want to and take the world's smallest political quiz. Why would you do that? If you take the world's smallest political quiz, it's only like 2 minutes. That's it. You take the quiz and you share the results. If you share the results, people will notice it and they'll start taking it too, and you'll start talking. And you might find out that you might share some things. You might both be moderates. You might both be liberals. You might both be progressive. You might both be libertarians. Who knows? I actually had someone take it last 2 days ago, this week, came up authoritarian. Does happen. I know. Lydia's like, what? Yeah, it's true. It happens. And I'll give you a little inside baseball here, Lydia. We've been giving people this test, the world's smallest political quiz, for now decades. And you can come up with 5 different options, right? Either you come up libertarian, moderate, conservative, progressive, or authoritarian. Luckily, a good thing, authoritarian's always the smallest piece. It's the smallest one ever. And it's under 5% usually. It's very low. However, recently, last couple of years, that percentage has been going up. Now, that doesn't mean that doesn't mean that America's 5% authoritarianism, but it means the people who are taking our test, who are basically the same types of people we catch online, people we catch at events, people we catch at, trade shows, those people who did the test, there are more authoritarians than ever. So a little bit scary. So guys, take the test. Hopefully you don't come up authoritarian. Share the results, have the conversation. And if you've already had and taken the test, no worries. There are like 6 or 7 different surveys based on things like monetary policy, foreign policy, military expenditure, pandemic response, all those things. Take one of those, share the results, and have the conversations. Theadvocates.org. It's all free. It takes a couple of minutes. They're my sponsor. They support my show. Support me for free. Just go there and do it. If you're saying, Larry, I've done it already. I like your show, but I don't want to do it. Then click the like button. What are you waiting for? Click the like button. Then you're talking trash. Stop talking trash and click the like button. And then do me one more favor if you would. And then one more. That is, please follow Lydia if you could. Follow her on YouTube, Sour Patch Lids, and that's Lids with a Y, Lyds. Follow her on Twitter, Sour Patch Lids. That's Lids with a Y, Lyds. So you were talking about your mission. Joe asked specifically, he asked a very specific question. He said, literally, what is your mission? Do you have an actual mission statement, or do you have a feeling? How do you know what your mission is?
I have a general mission, and that is to show people that we have, I know this is the name of a podcast, I'm sure out there somewhere, we have more in common than we realize. And this is something I've definitely found to be true living in a blue city. I think that living in the blue city is a good experience for people who are conservatives. It gives you a chance to see what everybody's really thinking. And it gives you an opportunity to sharpen your conversation skills, learn how to couch things in a really appealing and diplomatic way because you want to persuade people. You don't want to
Right.
make enemies with your neighbors, right? The people who live near you are going to have an effect on your life. So you would like to kind of give them the right impression of what you believe. So my whole gist is that we are not as broken as the news makes us think we are, because telling us we're broken is a really good way to get clicks and views. It's not
Yes,
a
it
good
is.
way to preserve our country. So,
Absolutely. Well, Sam asks, would either of you sign a contract that would compel your speech to be in line with YouTube or Facebook, etc.? That's a good question. Do you have a number, Lydia? Like, is there an amount you could be bought by? Like, if someone said, "Look, $100 million," like, is there a number you like? Fine, I'll shut up for 4 years or whatever. Like, is there a number?
So here's what Timcast decided to do. And this is also something that Steven Crowder has done and the Daily Wire has done very successfully. This has worked for every single last one of them. All of them are still on YouTube, right?
Mhm.
So all of them to some degree are towing the line. They're
Mm.
understanding. There is a well-known phrase that Steven Crowder uses, which is basically F off YouTube, because I'm going to go behind the paywall now and say all the things that I can't say on YouTube. But everybody knows that YouTube is the single best way to advertise what you're saying and the fact that you have a platform. Timcast did the same
Mm.
thing. They said, all right, we're done with the show. We're going to go over to the bonus section. We're going to record it. We'll upload it in a minute. Stick around and watch it later or watch it tomorrow, whatever. That's exactly how it's done. People who use YouTube as public relations are
Mhm.
very, very smart. YouTube is literally a tool of the left that you can then use against them by saying, hey, you know what you can do if you want to support me and see what I have to say about these issues that's a little less orthodox than what I typically say on
Mm.
YouTube? Sign up for my site. Go check it out there. You can pay like $5 a month or whatever, something affordable for most people. And then that works really well for all these guys. It's a really good business model. I think when you're running a business like the Daily Wire, you have to make money, right? We know this is a fact. They have a
I
lot.
like making money. I
I do
think making
too.
money is awesome. I hope we all make lots of money.
I do too. I do too. Maybe not even $50 million, but I want us to be able to afford to live. I know in
Yep.
New York City, it's very expensive. So I think that the Daily Wire has every right to expect the people who contribute to their platform to be truly contributing, like to not be saying crazy things that gets them
Right.
banned on purpose, just so they can take like 2 weeks off, because a 2 week ban means that you can't do anything. And I think the Daily Wire just wanted to disincentivize that kind of loose cannon type mentality. Steven Crowder is a little bit of a firecracker, and we
That's
know
true.
this, right? They've
Yep.
gotten demonetized on YouTube before, not even for saying anything super crazy. I understand where the Daily Wire is coming from. Got to keep everything running. Steven Crowder thought they did an
But
awesome.
I guess the point is, what if you're more of an up and comer,
Mhm.
right? Steven Crowder is going to be set no matter what, right? Even if
Right,
he decides to go off and just be a stand-up comedian the rest of his life, he's not going to starve, right? He'll be able to eat, he'll be able to live well, he'll be fine, right?
right.
He might not make $50 million, who knows? But he'll be fine. Um, everyone in the Daily Wire will be fine, right? Whatever, all
Yeah.
of them will be fine. None of them are going to be starving or on welfare. They'll all be great. But what about someone who's not doing as well, right? What if you had to basically be the thing that Crowder said, right? If you actually had to be not what reality, what you're talking reality. I'm talking, what if, whatever, I don't have $50 million, but say I did, and I said, Lydia, I adore you. I want you to come on my network. I need you to basically be my wage slave for 2 years, but I'll give you $10 million, $5 million a year, but basically just kind of basically be my, be the equivalent of my press secretary, right? Be the equivalent of that, right? You can say your own stuff, but as long as I say it's okay. Is there an amount of money where, 2 years, I could do so much with the money when I'm done, it's worth it? Is there a part where you would be okay saying, look, I'll sell my soul, basically, right? For
Yeah.
X number of years, for Y number of dollars. Is there a future you could see that would say, yeah, there's a number in time I would do it?
That's an interesting question, because To my mind, I've always worked. I've worked ever since I was like 17 years old, nonstop, like flat out 80-hour work weeks. And I never took a break all through my 20s, completely threw them away, just working my butt off. And what I found was that I might as well have been in a contract, but I also wasn't working in a field like this. My speech wasn't that
Mm,
important. I was just doing all the dirty work, for example, at the hospital. I felt like it was very important, it was very meaningful, but my speech was not as important to me. So I feel like that's something that has to come into effect, and you have to weigh whether it's more important that you be able to spout exactly what you think 24/7, or if you really, really think that, first of all, that the mission of the people you're working with, like the Daily Wire, is noble enough that you could kind of tamp down your own feelings and your own emotions for a little while to
yeah,
further their goal. And
right.
I think that's a personal choice that everybody has to make. Like, this is why they sent it to Steven Crowder. They were like, here's a contract for you to look over. You may like it, you may not. Let us know what you think. In
Mm,
most circumstances, that wouldn't have been made public. That just would have been something that the recipient would have been like, you know what? I don't like these terms. And then they would have said, can we renegotiate them? From my understanding, this was the first pitch they'd made to him, and he
right.
had made no effort to try to alter it, which makes me wonder what his true motivation was. Because usually you try to be like,
Mm,
hey, this isn't quite enough. Could we do like 75? Could we go as high as 100? And then if they're like, no, we really can't afford that, you can say, okay, well, we'll figure something else out. Maybe give me a little more leeway, and I'll be happy to accept this amount. So I feel like you can find and make compromises if you agree with the people with whom you'll be working
got it.
and
Okay.
you really want to promote their
It's funny
goal.
you say that because that happens often when someone runs for office, right?
Yeah,
And we had that trouble in the Libertarian Party. In the Libertarian movement, we're all only the person speaking is a real libertarian. Nobody else is, right?
right.
So that's kind of how that works in our movement, right? I'm the only real libertarian around here. No one else is, right? So anyone who's running is clearly not libertarian enough, right? Obviously. So we have to worry and say, you know what? And this is a problem that we have. We have to sometimes say, I don't have to care about what I think. I just have to support this person. I remember the last time I was very active on a large campaign was on Gary Johnson's campaign in 2016.
Oh, yes.
And I loved Gary Johnson. But did I agree with everything? No, he was, of course not, right?
Right.
However, what I would start every sentence with, the governor has been clear. Gary Johnson said this many times. Johnson, what Johnson has said is, so it was clear I was speaking for him. These were not my views. I
Right.
was espousing his views. So if I said something that I didn't agree with, I was okay with it because I wasn't saying I agree with it. I was saying this is what he thinks, right? So he thinks this. So in my head, as long as I was saying, and I started, if you see any of my stuff in 2016, when I was on TV for him, when I debated for him, I always start my sentences with, Governor Johnson has always said so. The governor has said so. Gary Johnson has been very clear on this. So I was always speaking for him. And I think if it was that, I could easily do it.
Yes.
Easily.
Yeah.
Easily.
That's exactly what I'm talking about, because when you have this higher goal, like your higher goal was trying to get Gary as close to the presidency as possible,
Absolutely.
whatever that looked like. And I did, just full disclosure, just so you know, I did vote for him in 2016. I was like,
Yay.
I have no idea what Trump's going to be like. I really don't want Hillary. I'll cast my vote for the Libertarian. It's more like
Nice.
it's
Nice.
a character assertion. I really want everyone to know that I don't really like the two-party system right now. It's too
Nice.
restraining. So I voted for him. But so there you go. I did a great job. I think that if you have a higher goal in mind, like Steven Crowder has always been a little bit hyperbolic and a little bit brash.
Sure.
I
Of
felt like
course.
that was really what we needed. I thought that we needed a late night comedian on the right side of the aisle. I always thought that was super cool about him. Very funny, very charming. He
Well,
would
that's his shtick. He's good at it, right? He's good at that.
right. And he knows it. And he does. He has 6 million subscribers on YouTube, which is fantastic. So it might be a little too late for him to jump on board with something like the Daily Wire, because he has his own mission that he's pursuing. Right. He's not starting from the bottom, like almost like Michael Knowles did, where he would come on and contribute to Andrew Klavan's show. He was the cultural commentator or whatever who would join Klavan occasionally. I don't know what actual role he performed at the Daily Wire before that, but he's a good commentator. And they're like, hey, do you want to join us as like a new startup? And Steven Crowder was saying that the Daily Wire hampers and hamstrings these young people as they start up. But I honestly think that people like Brett Cooper and some of these other young whippersnappers, I think it's great because the Daily Wire is a kind of unprecedented platform that these people would not have otherwise. Like me. Right now I have 12,000 subscribers on my YouTube and it's a start. It's not nothing. I appreciate every single person who subscribes.
12,000 is a lot. That's good.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
great. Good for you.
Yeah.
Yes.
And I appreciate everyone who tunes in and everyone who watches any of my videos. But it's like I'm not
Hold
starting
on one second if I could. You just gave me a perfect segue.
Yeah.
If you happen to be watching this on YouTube, you know you can super chat Larry Sharpe if you want to. You can go to Larry Sharpe and do super chats if you want to do that. I couldn't do that when I was running for office. That's unethical. You shouldn't do that. But I'm not running anymore. So you can if you want to. It's like possible.
Do it.
If you're not watching on YouTube and you're watching on Twitter, then do me a favor right now. Retweet this. Right now, if you're watching on Twitter right now, do me a favor, retweet this so other people can see it. So if you're on YouTube, you can always super chat me. If you're on Twitter, please retweet this. It does matter. Please make that happen. I'm sorry. So keep going. I want to make sure you get to 12,000 people on YouTube. You just gave me a good segue. I had to use it, Lydia. Sorry.
Yeah, 100%, 100%. But I don't think that Brett Cooper started with like 1,000 subscribers. I think she started with the full faith and encouragement of the Daily Wire. And that's something that is very, very helpful for a young startup. And even Matt Walsh talked about the way that they supported him through making What is a Woman, which became one of the years. It made it onto, Joe Rogan. Matt Walsh went on Joe Rogan and
exploded.
Yeah, it was amazing. It was a wonderful movie. And I'm so glad that they're doing these cultural things. That's their place. That's their goal. I think that doesn't align with Steven Crowder. But at the end of the day, I wish that Crowder had chosen to simply maybe just reject this contract or try to negotiate it instead of pulling it out and being like, they're on the side of big tech. Because as I said before, every single creator, conservatives have found a way to game the system that I think is so cool, where they say they use YouTube to send people over to their own things.
If he's right, that means everybody's in line with big tech. We're all, right? All of us are then, right?
Unfortunately, we all rely on big tech, maybe more than we wish we did.
Yes, that's true.
Yes. But the interesting thing about
are you going to are you on your way to like the Rumbles or the Rockfins? Or a lot of people I know who are worried about big tech are trying to go to smaller tech, right? Which is more like Locals or Rumble or Rockfin. Are you doing any of those things?
I'm not doing any of those things yet. My husband is a computer whiz, and he's going to help set up a site where we can do kind of the behind the paywall conversations that they have at timcast.com, which I think is going to be super fun. When I worked with Rumble, the interface was complex enough that it was arduous to like upload clips there. I uploaded all the clips from Timcast IRL to Rumble every evening, and it took a lot longer than it took to upload to YouTube. So I was like, I can see the capitalistic appeal of YouTube as opposed to one of these other startups. But I do think that YouTube needs competition. I don't think it's getting it right now, but I think that it will. I think Rumble's on the way up. I see big things in Rumble's future for sure. And I respect and appreciate them no end. I wanted to say too that as far as like a price tag on how carefully you'd be willing to speak, I have over 70 videos on YouTube right now, and not a single one is demonetized. I do not hold my tongue about anything. We talk about vaccination. We talk about all of this stuff. I didn't touch on the most recent news from Mia Cathell about that horrible discovery they made in suburbia that was really upsetting, because not because I think I might get demonetized, but because I think that it's very kind of triggering for people to hear something so horrible. I think that it needs to be shared for sure. And I tweet about it.
I don't know what you're talking about.
Okay. So there was like a ring of child abuse going on with an LGBTQ couple. I forget what state it was.
Oh, I did hear about that story. That's what you mean. Okay. Yes, I heard about that story.
Yeah. So I didn't get into that. I'm not sure if I would be demonetized, because YouTube asks you, are you saying things that could potentially disturb people? And I'm like, That's the most subjective thing I've ever heard.
Yes,
I have no
absolutely.
idea. People might be
Yeah.
disturbed about
I
the
can
fact
say I don't like Star Wars, and that could I mean, I
exactly.
like Star Wars, but I
Right.
could say that and people are like, "What? That's it. Throw them off YouTube."
Yeah,
So,
exactly,
yes.
exactly. And I do know that YouTube is super censorious. In fact, before we wrap up all this talk about Steven Crowder and the Daily Wire, Ben Shapiro was talking today on his show about how when Crowder was demonetized, Ben raised such a stink that he ended up talking on the phone to Susan Wojcicki and giving
Oh,
her a piece
wow.
of his mind. And I was like, that sounds like a friend, someone who
Yes.
has a position to be like, hey, don't censor my friend, let him speak, give him the
Yep.
freedom of speech everyone's entitled to. I was just like, it feels like such a dirty, low move to kind of pit friends against each other. And I have such an issue with it, but hopefully it resolves soon and everybody comes out a little bit stronger.
There we go. Well, I have a very, I guess, a good segue, a very different question. Patty asks, what are Lydia's favorite books on the shelf behind her, which she would suggest for I, a 60-year-old fan, to read?
Okay, so I don't have my books on the shelves behind me. These are my husband's books. We have like
Oh, okay.
Kafka, we have libertarian philosophers, we have a lot of computer books. My favorite books are in a box in our living room right now because we're still moving in. I love Terry Pratchett. And the most recent book
Hmm.
recommendation I gave from Terry Pratchett was a book called The Truth, which combines a few different factors. It combines journalism, and it combines family relationships. And when I was leaving
Hmm.
home, I left home kind of on rocky terms. I turned to that, and it was so comforting to me to read about somebody who was really interested in journalism and who also had a failing relationship with their family. So I got a lot of use out of that one. And Terry Pratchett is hilarious. He is also a libertarian at heart, if you're familiar with him, although he's from the UK. And I would strongly recommend all of his work. Pratchett, Pratchett. So yeah, check them
That
out
was
for sure.
easy. I,
Mhm.
I like that. I have to
Yeah.
do something that Pete asked me to do every single time. He wants me to read out what the national debt is. It's every show. So let me just do it real fast. 31,455,404,534,717.58.
Impressive.
And by the way, it just went up already. So
Mhm.
that's already higher than that since he
Okay.
posted it. So yes.
That's
Yes.
depressing. This is what
It
happens
is.
when we print our own money and we have no gold standard anymore.
Yes. So Joe asked, question for Lydia. Between Larry and Tim, who talks faster?
Oh my gosh. I don't know, but I do remember you were on a couple times with Tim, and both times it was fantastic rapid fire conversation. I mean, you're talking to somebody who listens to all her podcasts at 1.5 speed with all the silence removed. So it's just a constant stream of words the entire time. And I listen to Ben Shapiro at that rate too. So it's like it's fast and I can appreciate it. I like fast talking.
There we go. I think I'm faster because I'm from New York, which
Yep.
makes me faster.
Yep. I
He's
think
from
so
like
too.
Jersey, which is almost New York, but not.
We were in Jersey. He's actually from Chicago. So I don't
Oh,
know if
that's
that
right.
was
Yes, he was in
yeah.
Jersey. Right, right. He's
Yeah,
from
yeah.
Chicago. That's right. Yes. I'm sorry. Well, that's kind of close to New York, too. That's true. That's right. I forgot that. Yes, that's right. Gene says, love that black and gold shirt. Well, look at that. You have some fans, Lydia.
Thank
I
you. I
like that.
appreciate that. I actually bought this shirt for my husband because he loves the black and yellow. He's a libertarian anarchist at heart, but it's a ladies' shirt. So I was like, hey, what do you know? It fits me pretty well. So I'm going to wear it. It's awesome. So,
There we
yes,
go.
black and yellow.
So I do want to go into the part that you talked about, right? One of your goals for moving and shifting your lifestyle was because you wanted to focus on things like family and community and things like that. Have you been able to start any community there? Has it been something that you've been able to achieve? Have you struggled? I mean, it's a new place. I mean, I realize his family is there or nearby, I should say,
Yeah.
but yours isn't. So this is going to be a challenge for you, isn't it?
Yeah, so I've always lived in relatively conservative places. I was from Colorado in the more conservative part. I was in Colorado Springs, which is largely military, very fit population there, very conservative, not a lot of room or space for any of these silly ideas. But I think it's very good for you to mentally exercise your own ideas. I think you need to
Yes.
sharpen yourself with disagreement. I think that's very important. So I'm happy to be here. Right now, we're in the process of looking for a really good church. We were going to the church that my husband was raised in, and then the other day they had a sermon where they were kind of giving platform to the concept of anti-racism. And I said, that's fine if they don't understand it, but then you also have the question of, should they understand exactly what it means? Because it is so diametrically opposed to, for example, the nuclear family, which is something the Christian church is, of course, 100% behind. That's like the entire basis of the Christian church
So
is the family.
you and your husband are both Christians?
So we are looking for a church because we want the structure. I was raised in Christianity and I consider myself now an agnostic. I don't think that I'm
Okay.
smart enough to know for sure if God does or doesn't exist. I don't consider
Okay.
myself an atheist. There's certainly something out there. I would like to think that it's beatific and generous and kind to us, but it's hard to know. So I'm really just looking for the community structure. And because I know faith
Got it.
gives people such a North Star, that's
Mhm.
really what I'm looking for. So we're going to continue looking. We're going to probably try to look in the branch of Protestantism that I was raised in. I was raised in the Presbyterian Church of America, not the PCUSA, the PCA. They don't, they are very conservative. And I used to think that was very stifling. And now I'm like, please give me something like stable, because
This sounds like the Glenn Beck story. He had the same story.
right,
I don't know if you
exactly.
know
I
that
need to
story.
I
Same
need I
story.
gotta go and listen to him because I really appreciate his point of view. Him and Dennis Prager are probably two of some of the best, biggest voices in the conservative movement. And neither one of them, well, Glenn considers himself a Christian now, but Dennis is not a Christian at all. He's just a deep
He's
thinker.
Jewish, isn't he?
He is Jewish. Yeah, at least
He's Jewish.
ethnically. I'm not sure if he is a practicing Jew. But I find that to be so important. I think a lot of the problems we're seeing now with our culture are because we've removed that religious structure. We've removed all the pillars that were holding our house up. Now the ceiling is hovering above us, getting ready to collapse on us, or maybe it already has, and everyone's looking for something to replace those pillars with. They're turning to ideas like critical race theory. They're looking for like postmodernism, and they're saying
They're looking for gangs.
exactly.
As simple, they're looking for any community structure
Yeah.
to include a gang. Yes, I think you're right.
Literally.
That if you have a community structure that works well, you don't have gangs. There's no need for them.
Right. That's a good point, too. The fact is that the church offers such a community that people took for granted. And that was so key to keeping America great and strong was this knowledge that people at church were kind of keeping an eye on you. They cared about your life and they might judge you if you did things that were wrong. If, for example, you got pregnant out of wedlock, people were going to be raising an eyebrow at you and they might like try to intervene if they thought that you were maybe drinking too much or maybe addicted to some kind of something. They would step in and say, hey, we care about you. What are you doing? Can you not? Because you're being a bad role model for our kids, first of all, purely selfishly, but also because we care about you as a brother or sister in the church. Very important to have that. And that is more of the community-based organization that I talk about instead of the top-down authoritarianism from the government.
Yeah. Patricia says, define gang.
Ooh,
It's a good question, right? How I define gang, I use gang in the most, I guess, commonly thought of term, as in a bunch of young, almost always young men who are taking action in the black market. That's how I would define gang.
Right.
A group of young men who are taking action in the black market. That's how I would define gang. And if you do that in today's world, you're probably going to jail. But if you have a good community for those young men to take action within the regular market, they don't go to the black market, right? They go to the black market because they can't find satisfaction or action, or to your point earlier, Lydia, they can't find positive male role models in the regular market. If they can find it in the regular market, they would go there. When they can't find it, they go to the black market. That is how I define gang. I hope that was clear, Patricia. So yes.
Yeah.
Tony agrees with you. Tony says, God is out there. It's hard to explain. It's a journey you need to go on. Then you will understand. No other way so much you will learn.
Appreciate Tony. He's often on my show in the chat too. Thank you for joining me over here with Larry Tony. He is a good contributor, good ideas there for sure.
I love that. Now, Joe says something special. He says, maybe interview the hubby next.
Yes, I bet you would love him. He would love the opportunity to talk to a libertarian about libertarian ideas. I'm putting him on the spot because he's not a big public speaker.
Yeah, but maybe I'm going to want him to build me one of them cool websites like you getting to build. Maybe I want that instead. Maybe I want my own cool Sharpway website so I can do my stuff behind the scenes and like drop F-bombs or something. Whatever you do behind the scenes. I don't know. I'll do the thing, whatever the thing is.
Sure.
Yes, I'll do that cool thing.
I will hook you up with my husband for sure.
Whatever the kids want me to do, but behind the thing, whatever. Fine. Right. Yes, fine. So no, I'm glad you're saying what you're saying. And people who are watching or listening, if you like it, please click that like button. I know I keep bugging you, but it does matter. We have to get past those algorithms. It's very important we get past them. So please do that, right? It does matter. And as I always say, support my sponsors, theadvocates.org, so that we can keep doing this, right? It's free. It costs you nothing, right? I'm trying to keep the show as cheap as possible. So if possible, please do me a favor, support the advocates. It's my sponsor. It's free. Do it. Some of you have done it 1,000 times. Do it 1,001 times. It doesn't matter. Keep going. It is important. And obviously, please support Lydia here. Sour Patch Lids over at Twitter. And it's Lids, LYDS, and Sour Patch Lids on YouTube. Yes. So I know that you talk about community and you're out there trying to find a good church. I love that. But there's something else here. When it comes to family-friendly things, I know that's important to you. You've brought up not just community, you've also brought up family more than once on this show. And in the past, I know family matters to you. What's family-friendly now? Isn't it confusing for what really is family-friendly? And should we care, right? Those are two separate questions. What is family-friendly and should we care? Does it matter what's family-friendly or not?
That is a great question that I have not been asked, but I have certainly given it thought because I'm looking at trying to have my own family. So I'm like, okay, so how am I going to raise my kids? What am I going to tell them? What am I going to do with them? I actually bought the book that my dad taught me to read with because I want to be able to teach my kids to read in the same way. I now love reading. Yep. I'm very quick at it. I know how to skim and I know how to read in depth. It's great. So I think what's happening right now in our society is putting parents in a position where they have to become the strong men that hard times make. Because when you look at our society,
strong men that hard times. Okay, go ahead.
Right. Hard times make strong men. So what we want to do is be the kind of person who carefully analyzes everything that our kids look at without being helicopter parents. So we need to go through and we need to vet everything. My parents were good about this to a fault. They took it a little too far because I would have appreciated them allowing us to read more interesting, divergent ideas. They had a very strict conservative idea in mind. But I love the idea of making sure that what your kids are reading and absorbing is good for them and is teaching them the values that you want them to learn, like knowing how to defend their ideas, learning what ideas are right. We know that Drag Queen Story Hour is with us and it's not going anywhere. That's something that parents need to be on guard against because there is an age at which if you are exposed to these adult ideas, you will be permanently damaged. There is such a thing as too early for some of these things. And I know sometimes at the libertarian conferences, they're like, well, why shouldn't we be selling these hard drugs to 5-year-olds? That's such a silly question. We have real issues. And I know that libertarianism is full of wonderful, good ideas. And I think it really empowers parents to say, no, government, you know what? I'm going to help raise my kid. I'm not going to allow you to put critical race theory in front of them. I personally firmly espouse the idea of homeschooling. I was homeschooled. I thought it was crazy restrictive at the time, but I was never abused in any way. And I am so grateful to my parents for making sure that I was well protected from all of that stuff. I can't even tell you that every day I'm so happy that I was given this. It is a privilege to have parents who really care about you. So I think that what's truly family friendly is a set of parents who are extremely devoted to making sure that their kid is protected from all of the stuff that society wants to expose children to every day. That in
So
nature.
how does a parent then, to your earlier point, how does a parent then know, all right, 9 is the right age, 11 is the right age, 14 is the right age, right? How does a parent know that? And do we risk, to your point, maybe we go too far and I really should have let my daughter see this at 13 and not 18, or I'm making these things up, obviously.
Right.
I'm just saying in theory, right?
Well, I'm not a
How do
parent.
we know that?
Yeah, I'm not a parent yet, so I try not to preach too much to people who do have kids. I know it's very challenging. I know that every kid is different and they're all going to test you in kind of different ways. And because they're all so different, it means you're going to have to kind of adjust your expectations for what age you thought they would be able to handle X at. Like, my parents gave us more and more responsibilities as we got older. So it was less about privileges and what we could see and what we could do, and more about what we were capable of doing to help the family. And I found that to be, they've actually learned recently, or they came out recently and said the best way to raise really good kids is to put them in a position where they are contributing to the household, because that leads to them feeling like they have something to give, like their contribution is appreciated and necessary for the house. My mom had us girls cook one of the meals. She had 3 girls, so she had each daughter make one meal every day. And I took that so seriously. I made dinner for quite a while, and it was so important to me to, I would go out and I would collect all of the ingredients at the grocery store, for obviously for my mom to buy, bring them home. I would start cooking every day at 5 p.m. And then I was so happy when people liked what I did. And I was so gratified with that. That is the positive view of what you're talking about there, because you're asking the question about like what age you should be exposing your kids to this kind of thing at. And I think that parental involvement, like I remember the first R-rated movie we watched was The Patriot with Mel Gibson. And we watched it with our parents, and they said, I know this stuff can be really hard to watch, and you can cover your face if you think it's too much. I know it can be difficult. But they were like, this is how things really were. And we're so lucky to live in the shadow of such great men who did such difficult things to make sure that we had such a wonderful country to live in. And even that experience of something that could be considered traumatic or difficult for a kid to
You still
watch.
remember that
Yeah.
you're not telling me this story with like pain. You're
No,
telling me the story. You're proud of this story.
right, exactly. The only thing that I probably really shouldn't have seen was arachnophobia, because I had a little bit of arachnophobia for a few years after that. See, I was like 7 when I saw that. Now, in my mind, 7 might be a little too young to be exposed to like a shower of spiders falling from an upper
Right.
deck or something. That's a little too
Right.
young. And I think
Right.
I would probably use that personal experience to be like, okay, so scary stuff can probably wait until they're like 13 or 14. But historical stuff, like realistic depictions of the way things were, they could probably watch pretty young. And then, of course, that depends on what you've taught them so far. It's all just
Sure.
so, it
Sure.
depends on your
Sure.
kid personally.
No, I like what you're talking about. The ideas of, you want to give the kids more responsibility so they can be part of the family. I get
Right.
that completely, right? My oldest daughter's in college now, and my youngest one is junior high school, middle school right now. My youngest one's in middle school. And I think one of the things I did as a father is, it may sound crazy, but I joined them in many things. Like, they want to go do something, let's do it together. You like this
Right.
thing? Let's do it together. Let's do this thing, let's do it together. That's it. When my daughter was in a basketball team, I was a basketball coach. When
Great.
she played softball, I was a softball coach, right? I mean, I did the things with her. When she liked to watch videos, we watched videos together. I tell a story often on my show. My oldest daughter used to really like PewDiePie,
Yes.
and I used to watch PewDiePie videos with her. And
Yeah.
some people tease me because my youngest one really liked Roblox. Not as much now, but she used to really love Roblox. So I had a Roblox account, and people were like,
That's commitment.
Larry, you have a Roblox account? I'm like, yes, because I want to play with my daughter, right? So I'm going to play with her. Now they're older, they don't play as much anymore, but I still have an account. If you
Right.
go on my computer, there's still a little Roblox thing. You can press it and you want to go on my account, right?
That's great.
But obviously, I don't care about Roblox, right? However, when my daughters want to play, I'm in, right? Let's do this. We're going to play together. It's all good. That was my style. So I think my parenting style was more for both of my daughters. It didn't feel like it was kid-centric at all. Does it make any sense?
Right.
Like I wasn't like trying to control them what they're doing. Well, whenever they were doing something, I was in. So it felt like they had more control. It felt more of a bottom up than a top down. Does that make any sense?
Yeah.
As you often say.
Exactly.
It was much more of a bottom up way of doing it. As they decided, I said, okay. And when it came to chores, I never assigned my kids chores. I asked them what they wanted to do. I did what I call, I do in sales too when I do my training. I call the illusion of choice. So do you want to do the dishes or do you want to clean the table?
You're going to do one of those things.
I don't say that. I just go, which one? They assume that, well, I don't want to do dishes. Oh, so you do the table?
Okay.
I'm doing a table. Okay, you win. You're the boss. You're
That's
doing a table.
That's great.
So that's been my style of parenting forever. And I think that's what I've been doing.
I love that. So, and I actually, since I follow parenting, like Instagram pages and everything, that's exactly what they tell you to do. They're like, if your kid is trying to get in a power struggle with you, give them the illusion that they're going to be able to choose whichever they prefer. I think that's nice too, because it's true. It gives your child the position of being able to say, okay, well, I'm going to be able to do what I'd rather do. Even if I don't prefer either of these things, I have an option. So I'm going to do what I prefer to do.
But I also, it makes it so that they can't get mad at me. Right? Because then when it's a terrible job of cleaning the table, which they do, I go, what are you doing? It's a terrible job. Why don't you clean it? Well, I said, you said you want to clean the table, right? So clean the damn table. What's wrong with you? You said you want to do it. Good. Clean the table then. You picked it. I didn't pick it. You did. And
they have assumed the responsibility themselves, which is very powerful. Yeah.
Yes.
I love it.
I remember when my oldest daughter, she didn't want to do any homework. She's fighting with my wife, fighting terribly with my wife. Oh, unhappy, mad. And I said, why are you guys fighting? And so my wife's like, she won't do her homework. Yeah. I said, so what? She goes, you take it. She like walks away from me. I said, I got it. So I go to my daughter and I said, you want to do your homework? She says, no. I said, okay, what do you want to do? She goes, I want to watch SpongeBob. I said, go watch SpongeBob. She went. A couple hours later, I come back. I'm like, you want to do your homework now? No. What do you want to do? I'm going to keep watching SpongeBob. Okay, watch SpongeBob. She goes to bed, wake up next morning. She thinks that we're going to wake up early in the morning and do her homework. I didn't do it. So she goes to school, does do her homework. I'm home when she comes back. She comes back home and she's mad. She's got to be like 8. She's mad. I said, why are you mad? She said, teacher got mad at me. Why? Did she do your homework? Yeah. Wow. You probably did your homework, huh? She's like, yeah. She never fought me again.
How funny.
She never fought me again.
She saw the reaction to her own choices. And then
absolutely.
Like that. Yeah.
Absolutely. And I don't care about one day of homework. One day of homework means nothing. No one's going to remember that. Nobody cares. I mean, most school is useless anyway. So, I mean, who cares, right? It doesn't really matter. But what mattered was the lesson that was learned. My youngest one fought me a different way. She didn't want to study for a test. Didn't want to study.
Okay.
So I said, okay, don't study. She goes, what do you mean don't study? I said, go fail a test. And I speak to my daughters just like this. I mean, I literally just go, yeah, don't fail a test then. I don't care, fail a test. Don't you want me to do well in school? No, you told me you wanted to do good in school. You told me you didn't want to be stupid. That's what you told me. If you want to be stupid, be stupid. It's your life. Don't fail your test. She went, no, I don't want to be stupid. I said, you better study then. She said, I need help. I said, I'll help you. Done.
That's great. That's perfect, because then you're saying, well, you know what you don't want to be, but you also know what you don't want to do. I'm willing to bet that what you don't want to be really outweighs what you don't want to do right now. That's a very powerful lesson too. I feel like,
but also, go ahead.
I was talking to my husband about this yesterday, and I said, I think that mothers are great when kids are younger. And then when they get a little older, dad can have that
100% true.
Be like, all right, so here we go. Here's what we're going to do. And I thought that was great. I was like, I feel like that would have been perfect balance for me.
When my daughters were little, I was really the playmate.
Right.
I was on the floor playing with the blocks. I really was the playmate more than anything else. My wife took on the massive share of the child rearing. I mean, she gets 90% was her. I was 10%. And I was mostly just the playmate, take them to the park, take them out sledding, whatever, that kind of stuff. Right. When we got older, I definitely have more influence on them once they start becoming 10, 11, 12. I have much more influence on them than, and as teenager, my oldest one, a teenager, had a lot more influence on her when she was a teenager, a lot more. And most people, most of my kids don't really rebel against me. They rebel, as all kids do, but not against me. And the reason why is I don't tell them to do anything. It's hard to rebel when you don't give them any orders.
Right.
I just give them choices. I don't give them any orders. You get choices. So they don't ever rebel against me.
That's interesting because that removes their potential to rebel against you. And it also removes you from being a helicopter parent and trying to force them into doing all this stuff that you want them to do. Because I'm sure you have a very clear vision of who you'd like them to be when they grow up.
I don't.
Like
no.
No?
I'm gonna give you, everyone who, if you're listening now, if you're a parent, if you want to be a parent, I'm gonna give you some free consulting. Give you some free consulting. And it's what I'm gonna tell you is very hard to hear. It's very simple, but very hard to do. If you remember two things, you will be it's very easy to parent. Only two things, but it's very hard. Number one, your kids are not now and never will be you.
Yes.
Man, is that hard to accept.
Yeah.
But if you actually get that in your heart, that's number one. Number two, you cannot protect or control your kids. Boy, is that hard to accept, but you cannot. Which means you must train them to protect and control themselves. If you get that, if you really get it in your heart, you must train them to protect and control themselves, which means the number one thing you must be is a good example.
Ooh,
because
hard.
Kids don't do what we say. They do what we do.
Very hard.
If you can understand that concept, you will be a better parent. That's all I can tell you.
That's exciting. That makes me even more excited to start my family because you're right. I constantly talk about how there's such a difference between simple and easy.
Yep.
Something very simple can be exceedingly difficult and you can work on it for your entire life and never be good at it. But I really appreciate those 2 points. I'm going to have to keep those in mind.
And to be clear, I'm not sitting here saying I always did it. I want to be clear. I did not always practice what I'm preaching.
Right.
But I do know from both my successes and my failures, both of those, that's what I should be trying to do always. And all of us should be doing this, if we're parents, to the best of our ability. But of course, we're not perfect. Of course, we'll fail. I did too. I wish I was the perfect parent. I was not. But as close as I could be, I did that.
Yes. I love that and I appreciate that. And I will say on the note of failures, in my experience, what I remember from growing up was watching the ways that people failed and seeing what happened to them and being like, oh my gosh, I don't want that to happen to me. Then I remembered that. Like, I feel like we really remember negative enforcement or like negative messages that we see. We're just like, oh my gosh, I really want to avoid that. So I'm going to change my behavior so that doesn't happen.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So I guess I went down a couple of roads with you tonight. Before we wrap it up, I want to ask, are you going to go to a guest-like show similar to what you've had in the past? Or are you going to kind of stay kind of you doing your thing? Where are you going to go with this? Where's the show going?
We're going to go in a guest type direction. And I would really love to have several ladies on and have like lady chat. I really feel like conservatives need a place to talk to women. And I think that women really need to feel represented by the movement. So hopefully that's something that we can get to down the road. Really can't wait to bring on guests soon. I'm hoping that will be our next project. We have so many little projects we're working on right now.
Sure.
We'll get to it. We'll make it happen. Yes, very excited. And I would love to have you on my show too. So hopefully that's something we can do soon. Yes.
So the last piece I want to bring up is, with all the challenges we've talked about, all the ones you have going on, new move, family, everything, give us a tip. How do you focus on positivity when there's got to be a lot of uncertainty around you right now, right? It's got to be a lot of uncertainty, a lot of worry, right? You're just human, right? A lot of fear, all those things. How do you make it positive?
Ooh, so for a long time now, ever since I kind of moved a little bit away from Christianity, I started focusing in on Stoicism. And they have a couple principles in there that sound very depressing, but are actually very uplifting. So the first one is to remember that you will die. And that's hard for people. I know that modern Americans don't want to think about death. It's one of the only things that happens to literally everyone. No one wants to talk about it.
It's the
So
only thing you have to do.
uh-huh.
It's
Yes.
it's the only thing you have to do is die. Everything else is
Exactly. Exactly. Sorry, I couldn't hear you. Yeah, it's true. And it does happen to everyone. So I'm like, okay, I want to live each day so that if I die in my sleep in the middle of the night, I feel like I lived a good life. Obviously, you wouldn't have a chance if you died in your sleep. But if you saw a bus barreling down toward you and you knew it couldn't stop, you wouldn't be like, oh my gosh, I forgot to say I'm sorry or thank you. So my whole goal is to try to live my life like that. And when you do, it makes you really grateful, and it makes it so that you're constantly looking for the silver lining. You're looking for the best part of life. And then the other thing that Stoicism teaches is to imagine the worst. Because when you do imagine the worst possible thing that could happen to you, when it doesn't, you are incredibly grateful. And when you live your life with a spirit of gratitude, it's so easy to see everything positive. Like right now, I'm waiting for my medicine to be refilled. I have multiple sclerosis, and they've really delayed getting back to me with my medicine. And I've chosen to have the mindset that stressing about it is not going to help. If anything, it would
true.
exacerbate my multiple sclerosis. So I'm like, all right,
Yeah, let's not add stress.
whatever happens will happen. It's okay. This is obviously what's meant to happen if it is what's happening. So I'm going to roll with it. And I think that having this kind of attempted mindset of gratitude is very helpful when it comes to looking at all this stuff, because honestly, we live in America. We won the jackpot. So I feel like if I base everything on that, I can look around at my neighbors and be like, look at all these people from all these different countries who care about the same things I care about. That's the most amazing thing in the world. And then you go from there, and it's like, holy cow, everything is great and possibly getting better. And there's so much room for it to improve. And who knows what's going to happen tomorrow. So you just have to kind of adjust your expectations and work from that starting point, and you will find that everything cheers up a little bit. I don't know. It
I
sounds a
like
little
that.
trite when I say it that way, but I think that
No,
works for me.
I think that, in a similar fashion, one of my favorite books that I've ever read is a book by Miyamoto Musashi. He was the
Yes,
greatest Japanese swordsman, The Book of Five Rings.
I love that book.
Yes, one
Love
of my
that
favorite
book.
books. And the
Yes.
reason why is he talks about the code of the warrior, or the Bushido. And in his book, he says you have to understand that you are already dead.
Hmm.
Accept that you were already dead.
Yes.
It's similar to what you were saying, right? And if you
Yes.
do that, you have to focus on only one thing: your legacy. So, what will people think of you? What will stay once you're gone? What will be the remnants once you're
Yes.
gone? And I think that I took it to one step further, which is I said, okay, I'm dead. So I've got to focus on my legacy. And I said, how can I make sure I have a strong legacy? And in my own mind, I realized that, which was what has personally made me get past bad things, is understanding that everything is temporary. My joy is temporary. So I should really accept it when I have it and be happy.
Right.
And my pain is temporary. So it will go away.
That's right.
Everything is temporary.
Yes.
And if I accept that as true, what I must do to have a good legacy is focus on the moment right now. Because the only thing that isn't going away is right now. It's always right now.
Right.
It is always right now. So if I focus on the now, and I'm with you right now, and I'm with you right now, Lydia, and you're all that matters to me right now, I'm with you, my audience, that's it. I focus on that. If I do that, and I can be present in every one of my encounters, and you've met me before, I am very present when I'm
Yes.
with people.
He certainly is.
I am very present. When I'm with somebody, I am with that person, right? I'm very present. And if I can be very present, I will by default have a good legacy.
Right. That's wonderful. And that is like that's the logical continuation of stoicism, and that's why I loved the 5 rings, because it's like you're basically saying this is the present. And I remember when my brother was like 20, he was having a hard time with things, and I said, you need to live in the present so that you don't regret the past and planning for the future. So you need to be in this position now, here, that you're grateful for. And you need to be working to make it so that you don't regret this moment tomorrow, and so that the following day is even better. It was simpler when I said it initially, but I loved the idea of working only in the moment and focusing exclusively on where you were, because we lose so much time thinking about the past and the future. It's just not. So, yes.
Absolutely. 100%. Well, that's great. Look, I want to say thank you so much for coming on. I appreciate you giving me a chunk of your evening. Really, it's great.
Thank you for having me. I had a wonderful time with you.
Excellent. And everyone else, thank you for watching and listening. And please do me a favor. I know I say it all the time, but I gotta say it one more time. If you haven't clicked that like button, what are you thinking? This was a great show. You're watching still. You're listening too. It's a great show. Click the like button. If you haven't subscribed on YouTube, please do so. If you haven't followed me on Twitter, please do so. And lastly, Lydia gave us an hour of her time. Please do the right thing by her. Go follow her on Twitter, Sour Patch Lids. That's Lids with a Y, Lyds. And also her YouTube channel. And watch her show too. 6 o'clock, right?
That's right. Every day.
Eastern, every day. Watch her show on YouTube at Sour Patch Lids, again with the Y, on YouTube. Guys, thank you so much for talking with me this evening. I'm off Saturday and Sunday, but I will be back. I will be back on Monday night. I will see you all very soon.